The letter arrived on thick, expensive parchment-like paper, bearing the embossed seal of the Bramblewood Homeowners Association. Mark sliced it open with a thumb, his expression shifting from casual curiosity to grim fury in 3 seconds. "They're fining us," he said, his voice flat. $200. Lena looked up from her laptop, where lines of code cascaded down the screen. "What for now? Did our geraniums show insufficient community spirit?" The trash cans, Mark read, his jaw tightening. They were visible from the street for approximately 15 minutes after pickup yesterday. "I had a client call." "For God's sake," Lena sighed, rubbing her temples. Bramblewood was supposed to be their dreamer quiet, tree-lined cul-de-sac an hour from the city. But the dream came with a nightmare. The HOA, presided over by the impeccably dressed and morally rigid Cynthia Graves. Cynthia enforced the 400-page bylaws with the fervor of a zealot. Lawns were to be between 2.5 and 3 inches. Fence slats could be no more than 1.5 inches apart. The approved shade of beige for exteriors was officially called Bramblewood bisque. Their breaking point came not from their own finds, but from their next-door neighbor, Arthur. A kind, retired history teacher with a passion for birdwatching, Arthur had built a small, elegant birdhouse shaped like a miniature Victorian library. It was a masterpiece. The violation notice called it an unapproved structure and demanded its immediate removal. Arthur tried to reason with Cynthia. He presented plans, offered to paint it Bramblewood bisque. She was unmoved. The fines piled up. Arthur, on a fixed income, couldn't pay. The HOA, leveraging a clause buried deep in the covenants, placed a lien on his house and initiated foreclosure proceedings. The day the for sale by bank sign went up on Arthur's lawn, Mark and Lena watched from their window as the old man silently packed his life into a small U-Haul. He gave them a weak wave, his eyes hollow. That was the moment their anger crystallized into a cold, determined plan. "We can't fight them with anger," Mark said that night, his voice low and steady. "We fight them with what they love most: rules." Lena, the more brilliant coder of the two, smiled a thin, dangerous smile. Weaponized compliance. Phase 1, the bureaucratic siege. Their campaign began quietly. Lena created a sophisticated database, digitizing every single bylaw, amendment, and meeting minute ever recorded. Mark, the strategist, cross-referenced them, looking for contradictions, ambiguities, and opportunities. The first shot was a simple, perfectly formatted request to the HOA board. Bylaw 12.7.c stated that any homeowner could request an official, notarized copy of the community's financial audit for the past 5 years. The audit had to be provided within 30 days, at the HOA's expense. Cynthia's board, used to wielding the rules, not being challenged by them, was caught off guard. Producing 5 years of notarized audits was a massive, costly undertaking. But they had to comply. It was the law. Next, Mark invoked a little-known clause about architectural harmony. He submitted a 50-page request to have his front door painted a specific, eye-watering shade of neon pink. The bylaw stated the board had to hold a hearing for any architectural change, and the hearing had to be scheduled within 45 days. He timed it for the night of the annual Bramblewood Summer Gala, forcing the entire board to miss the social event of their season to listen to his absurd, legally unassailable argument about subjective color theory and community expression. While the board was tied up, Lena struck. She and a few other secretly sympathetic neighbors simultaneously submitted hundreds of petty, but valid, maintenance requests. A flickering streetlight on Hemlock Drive bylaw 8.3.a. A perceived unevenness in the sidewalk on Maple Lane bylaw 8.4.f. Each request required a written response from the management company, which charged the HOA a fee for every one. The HOA's operational costs began to skyrocket. The management company threatened to raise their rates. Cynthia's perfectly coiffed, hair began to show signs of strain. Phase 2. The legal quagmire. The real masterpiece was Bylaw 18.2, the Open Forum Rule. It stated that any homeowner could add an item to the monthly meeting agenda, provided it was submitted in writing 72 hours in advance, and the board was required to allow a 20-minute discussion. Mark and Lena recruited a network of disgruntled homeowners. The woman fined for a non-bisque welcome map. The man cited for having a non-conforming garden. Nomi. They became the Bramblewood irregulars. At the next meeting, when Cynthia tried to move quickly to new business, Mark stood up. According to the agenda, it's time for item 7.b, a discussion on the aerodynamic efficiency of the mandated Heritage Series mailbox and its potential violation of local wind speed ordinances. Cynthia stared, speechless. For 20 minutes, a retired aerospace engineer, prepped by Mark and Lena, delivered a stunningly boring yet technically flawless presentation on mailbox drag coefficients. The board was legally obligated to listen. The following month, it was a 20-minute discourse on the migratory patterns of ants and their rights under the HOA's own pest control bylaws. The month after that, a philosophical debate on whether a rain barrel constituted a water feature which required a $500 permit or utilitarian infrastructure. The meetings stretched for hours. Board members resigned out of sheer boredom and frustration. The remaining ones were exhausted, their emails clogged with absurd queries and formal requests. The machine was choking on its own red tape. The final gambit, checkmate. Cynthia knew who was behind it. She tried to fight back, issuing fines for even more microscopic infractions. But each fine was met with a thick, bound appeal packet from Mark and Lena, citing precedent, contradictory rulings, and procedural errors. They were tying her up in knots. The final blow came from the one place Cynthia never expected, her own board. With the HOA's finances in shambles, from legal fees and management costs and morale at an all-time low, Mark and Lena launched their masterstroke. They discovered a clause stating that if the HOA's operating fund dropped below a certain level for 3 consecutive months, and the board could not present a viable recovery plan, the homeowners could petition for a vote of no confidence and the dissolution of the entire board. Lena's database identified every homeowner who had ever been fined, annoyed, or simply disliked Cynthia. They ran a quiet, efficient campaign. The day of the special meeting, the community hall was packed. Cynthia stood before them, her composure finally cracked. "This is anarchy. You are destroying this community." Mark stood up. "No, Cynthia. We are using the community's rules. The rules you cherished so much. You taught us that every action has a consequence. We're just ensuring those consequences apply to everyone." The vote wasn't even close. Cynthia Graves and her entire board were ousted. In the following months, a new interim board was formed with Mark and Lena at its helm, reluctant leaders who accepted the roles only to oversee one piece of business. They passed a sweeping amendment, simplifying the bylaws from 400 pages to 4. The new core principles were simple: be a good neighbor, maintain your property, mind your own business. The first act of the new board was to rescind the foreclosure on Arthur's house. The bank, bewildered by the whirlwind of legal letters from the new HOA lawyers, who were, in fact, Mark's old college roommate working pro bono, agreed to sell the house back to Arthur at cost. The day Arthur moved back in, the entire street celebrated. There was laughter, music, and the smell of grilled food. And on the porch of the little Victorian library birdhouse, now proudly painted a vibrant, unapproved blue, a family of chickadees had taken up residence. Mark and Lena sat on their own porch, watching the party. Their trash cans, visible at the edge of the driveway, were not a concern. No one was measuring the grass, and the only thing gleaming was the setting sun on the happy, finally free, faces of their neighbors.